It's approximately half the country is going to vote for the Democrats. And I find that very disturbing. In the past, if you voted for a Democrat or a Republican, there used to be, you could say it was kind of a uniparty where the Republicans talked about free markets, but they didn't do anything about it. I mean, they were better than the Democrats. And the Democrats talked about social freedom, but that was a lie too, but at least that was their line. But at this point, we're actually descending into a police state in the U.S. where we're getting both warfare and welfare from both sides of the political equation. But Democrats have actually become the new Jacobins. I think the best comparison to them is the people that took over France after the revolution. They share the same philosophy, they share the same psychological attitudes as people like Robespierre did. In those days, they're very, very dangerous. They're authoritarians, they're even totalitarians when you scratch them under the surface. So it's not that I support the Republicans, it's just that they're less dangerous than the Democrats are. It's going to be a disaster either way, because we're on the cusp of a civil war. I wrote an article in 2012. In that article, I put my finger on the fact that a big problem with Trump is he has absolutely no philosophical core, in addition to some really stupid economic ideas that he has. I mean, in terms of percentage of the budget, he was a bigger spender than Joe Biden was. He really was spending like a drunk sailor insofar as the president can influence the budget. He was terrible. He believes in all kinds of state intervention, as long as it's intelligent intervention, which is the kind that he likes for whatever reason. So yes, he did some good things. Trying to deregulate, excellent idea. Trying to reduce taxes, excellent idea. But it's impossible to reduce taxes unless you reduce spending. Because if the government doesn't take it out of its subjects' hides with direct taxes, it will take it out indirectly through currency debasement. So there is no such thing as a tax cut unless there's a massive spending cut. And nobody seems to have any interest in talking about this $36 trillion national debt, where the interest that the government is paying now is more than the so-called defense budget. And of course, that word defense, inappropriate when we're talking about what the military is doing these days. So now this is a complete disaster, no matter who wins. But why do I prefer Trump? It's that he is a cultural conservative. In other words, he doesn't want to overturn the basis of American society. He wants to keep the basic culture where it is, which is great because American culture is what made this country different and greater than any others. I'm of that opinion. He doesn't want to change that. Kamala does, and all the Jacobins that are gathered around her will be better than Kamala. Few Americans are aware of the fact that for most of this country's history during the 19th century, the federal government lived on import duties and excise taxes. That was it. The whole federal government was financed on those two things. And anything that can be done to abolish the IRS, pull it out by the roots and sow Agent Orange where it came from. Just the opposite of what's happened under Biden, where they tried to hire 80,000 more of these bedbugs that work for the IRS. The problem is the U.S. is a gigantic importing nation. I'm telling you, yes, the idea of abolishing the IRS, wonderful idea. It would help the country recover and boom in many, many ways. But financing it with import duties, the U.S. is by far the world's largest importer. And we don't pay for those imports with exports. In fact, the largest single exporting entity in the U.S. used to be Boeing. And if you can't import these hundreds of billions of dollars from foreigners, they can't afford to buy your stuff either. And in today's world, nobody wants to accept the dollar anymore, which is our major export, actually. It's not soybeans or Boeings, it's dollars. And people accept it because they're used to paying with dollars. Everybody uses the dollar. So the answer to the question is, if he actually tries to do that, he could collapse the world economy because trade would collapse. The only solution to the problem is not by substituting something else for the income tax. It's by radically cutting government expenditures. I mean, wholesale abolition of most or almost all of the government agencies in Washington. Just abolish them and let the people that are employed by them, I hesitate to say work for them, let them find some new way to put bread on the table. Abolish welfare. The government since it's a vehicle of pure force, that's what Mao Tse-tung said, comes out of the barrel of a gun, should do nothing but protect you from force. That means a night watchman military, not enough to go out and look for wars abroad, a police force, and a court system to adjudicate disputes without resorting to force. That's it. So that's where you want to go, and that will solve the problem. Now, let me say something really radical. I don't think that debt can ever be paid off. It is actually impossible at this point. So what should you do with the debt? Hey, I've got an idea. How about defaulting on it? And I can give you several reasons why actually I think that's a good idea. For one thing, the people that have been buying the debt, banks, the pension funds, all these things, they have in effect been making the stupid things, the destructive things the U.S. government does possible by financing them. They should be punished for that, as should individuals that have been financing an evil institution. So from a moral point of view, I think that's great. And I'll give you another moral argument. It's that if that debt's going to be paid off, it's not going to be baby boomers like myself that are going to pay it off. It's going to be the young people of the country that will pay it off, who will be turned into indentured servants. They'll be turned into serfs to pay off this gigantic debt, which is growing like topsy every single day. So if you have any regard for your children and grandchildren, you should punish the people that have been financing the government and not punish the next generations who will have to pay off these things. So yeah, that's the other thing I do. We're going to see massive debt defaults on the part of all these damn governments. And that gets us to something else. How do you preserve your wealth? Well, you sure don't want to own dollars or euros or yen or any of that. These are all just fiat paper currencies that have no intrinsic value whatsoever. I'll make a prediction. In the next 5 years, long-term interest rates, which the Fed can't really control. They can control short-term interest rates, but long-term interest rates are a function of the market and whether people want to hold paper, which only promises to pay in 10 years or maybe 30 years. Interest rates are headed back towards the levels they were in the early 1980s. Most people are just unaware of the fact that in the early 80s, the U.S. government was paying 15, 16, even 17% for money, which sounds unbelievable now, but it's going to go back to those levels. That's going to be chaos. Just choose the form of chaos that you'd like. Mm-hmm. And the form of chaos, which is inevitable at this point, because actions have consequences. Cause has effect. You jump off a 100-story building, unless magic happens, you're going to hit the ground. So I choose that way, that kind of chaos, because it would destroy the power of the U.S. government. If you do anything else, it's just going to cement it and make it more powerful. This has been true for a very long time. The U.S. is essentially uninvadable. I mean, is China going to mount trans-Pacific invasion? I don't think so. Russia is incapable and totally uninterested in invading. Who else is going to invade? Well, I'll tell you who's invading. The undocumented aliens, who are very different from people that came to this country in the 19th century and early first half of the 20th century. These people were all Europeans. They shared roughly the same religion, the same race, the same language group, the same culture, generally kind of the same habits. That's all good. But most important is they paid their own way. I mean, you landed in Ellis Island and most of these people from Europe were penniless, but they made their own way. There was no government to give them free food, shelter, and walking around money, which is what we do with these people. And the difference is you got the best people who were seeking opportunity in those days. Now you're getting the worst people who are looking for a free ride and know they're going to get it. So we're actually being invaded that way very effectively. Now it's a disaster. And of course, Trump says he's going to massively deport all these people. Well, that's going to be hard to do. These people have no right to be here. Well, the first thing you can do is cut off all their benefits. Second thing you can do is cut off all welfare benefits, period. Welfare benefits of whatever type are the most destructive and corrupting possible thing you can do to a society. They shouldn't be cut back. They should be abolished, period. That'll solve a lot of the problem. A lot of these people will go home when there's no free ride. And otherwise, if you're here and you don't belong here, you're violating the law, we'll send you home. And what if you don't know where their home is? Because they burned their passports or whatever, can't be determined. That's a problem that has to be solved. But it should be solved because legitimate immigrants to the U.S., and this is crazy too, have to spend many thousands of dollars for legal bills and God knows what to get their green cards. These people that are crossing the border, most of whom are actually indigent, and Trump is right about this. They're not the best and the brightest. Anybody with any knowledge of economics or finance at all knows that it's potentially a hot potato where there are tens of trillions of dollars outside the US, but foreigners don't have to use dollars. It's just convenient. So I wouldn't hold a lot of dollars. At some point, when other foreigners won't accept them, there's only one place all those tens of trillions of dollars will go: back to the US to buy businesses, to buy stocks, to buy real estate. It'll create catastrophic price rises in the US. It's a catastrophe. I mean, we've had a free ride for 40 years exporting mainly dollars, and that chicken's going to come home to roost. But as far as what's going to happen with the new BRICS currency, I don't think it's going to work. And the reason I don't think it's going to work is because there's absolutely no reason why the Russians and the Brazilians and the Chinese and the Indians and the South Africans and all the rest of them have to trust each other. I mean, and 40% gold, where's that gold going to be held? The only way to solve this problem is simply to use gold as money, and not 40% backing, 100%, because you use gold, period. And in fact, it's that money should not have anything to do with government. It's because government as a coercive institution will inevitably corrupt the money system. Gold should be money, 100%. Gold coins should circulate, and you should save the gold coins. I mean, sure, you can get a piece of paper from a bank that you trust because it's perhaps more convenient than a physical gold coin, but you have to trust the bank. And the whole morality of the society, and certainly of the banks, has become so corrupt that I don't think they should be trusted with a whole lot. But look, this is the Space Patrol. It ain't going to happen. Well, it's going to happen when the current system collapses totally. And then there's no alternative but to use gold coins and silver coins for other purposes. But answer to the question, yeah, it's wonderful they're moving to this direction. It's wonderful they're talking about gold, but it's not going to work. Just like the euro, which has lasted much longer than I thought it would or it should have, is going to dry up and blow away because it's backed by nothing. You know, you can say the dollar is an I owe you nothing, but the euro is a who owes you nothing. I mean, it's backed by nothing but confidence, which is the worst thing to back something by. So this is going to be really interesting over the next 5 years to see how this all sorts out, because the world is on the edge of a real reset, to use that criminal Klaus Schwab's word, financially, economically, monetarily, militarily, politically, socially, demographically. I don't think there's ever been anything quite like this. I mean, sure, World War II, really bad, affected all those things. This is going to be worse. I just hope they don't use nuclear weapons. I've always been a gold bug, not always a gold bull, since I got out of college, and I didn't have any money at all. But back then, gold was $42 an ounce, and I was buying gold back then. And I've never sold a single ounce. So I've got quite a bit accumulated over the years, and I continue to accumulate it because this thing is, the gold market is likely at this point to go hyperbolic, and especially for silver, bullish, because silver is a much, much smaller market in all ways than gold is. If silver were to return to its previous all-time high, which is about $50 an ounce, it would have to go well over 200. And gold at 2,700, previous all-time high was $800 an ounce is what it hit back in 1979, 1980. Since then, the general price level is about quadrupled, maybe quintupled. It depends on whose numbers you want to trust. I don't trust the CPI much, but in real terms, silver is a better value. It's much more volatile. I think if you want to speculate, silver is the way to go. It's an old adage in the market that money makes the mayor run. And with the U.S. government running approximately a $2 trillion per year deficit, most of that is being sold to the Federal Reserve. And when the Federal Reserve buys U.S. government debt, the Fed credits U.S. government accounts at commercial banks, Citibank, Chase Manhattan, whatever, with Federal Reserve notes that the U.S. government can then dispense. But that's not all. That's not where it ends, because that money is then in the banking system. And banks can, with the fractional reserve system, can lend several times that amount of money to businesses, mortgages, car loans, whatever. So what I'm leading to is these government deficits result in a huge increase in the amount of currency and debt in circulation. So what are people going to do? Smart financial people. Well, they don't want to own bonds. They don't want to own paper. They're buying the shares of big corporations. And with all that money in circulation, earnings of these corporations are still going up. Now, it's not going to go on because for other reasons, there's so much debt in society. People are going to have to stop consuming and go into reverse on that. But it's money printing is the answer. Mining is a horrible 19th century choo-choo train business. It's a really stupid business from every point of view. That's why you can't invest in mines. I'm mainly speculating in mining stocks and other resource stocks because they're very, very underpriced relative to gold, silver, uranium, copper, oil. And I think that the worm will turn. And as those markets have done, they could go 10 to 1 over the next few years, and I'll make a lot of money. There's a good chance that oil is going to explode upwards because with what's going on now in the Middle East, it's entirely possible that the Straits of Hormuz will be closed off, and all of that Middle Eastern oil is not going anywhere. You know, the world runs on oil, and people will pay whatever they have to get what there is. Oil could go to a couple hundred easy. If the Straits of Hormuz are closed off, is Western European militaries and the U.S. military going to be able to solve that problem? Well, yeah, probably, but not easily. So yeah, oil's going higher. I like natural gas actually more than oil for a lot of reasons. And it's been holding up pretty well. It got down to as low as $2 per MCF. And it's up to $3 now. It could go a lot higher. Yeah, I'm a bull on energy. I don't care that oil dropped a few percent in a day. And of course, we all know that 3 years ago, oil actually went to negative numbers, which you'd think would be metaphysically impossible. But no, it's not.